Look at you. And that's what we do. It's look at you. Charles Chip Esten, how are you, young man?
I'm doing so fine, and I appreciate those kind words, especially the young part.
Oh, you know what? Let me tell you a story. I busted my wife last night. I said, she goes, "What do you got planned today?" I said, "I'm talking to Chip Esten." She goes, "Oh, what are you talking to him about?" And I said, "He's got a brand new album out." And she goes, "Really?" She goes, "What is it?" I said, "It's called Love Ain't Pretty." And there's 2 seconds of silence. And I look at her and I said, "But I know what you're thinking." And she goes, "What?" You're thinking, "Yeah, but he sure is." And she just went, "How? What? Where?"
Look at me blushing now. I'm as red as my guitar.
You have been busy. Let's talk about the album first, because I got so much I want to talk to you about. And tell me when you run out of time, tell me. All right.
Let's just keep going.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. So, Love Ain't Pretty, and you've got it's you released it January 26th, right?
Yes, correct.
And you co-wrote every song on the album, right? You had a hand in writing it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And we're not talking about people nobody knows who helped you write on this. You got to write with Eric Paslay, who I otherwise call country music's Gandalf.
I think he's so great. First of all, I don't think I'm damning him with faint praise to say he's underrated. He's an incredible writer. People don't know some of the songs they love that he's written, including "Keep On Dreaming," even if it breaks your heart, the Eli Young band made famous. But then also his voice, man. I think he's got one of the great voices in Nashville, which is why he co-wrote 2 songs on this album, and I shanghaied him into coming to sing one of them with me down the road, and he's on that. He's all over that one.
Well, Eric's fun, nice. Thank goodness he's got such a laid back personality, because he's 7'9". People don't realize that. If he was a mean man, oh wow, what a terror that'd be. Well, and another one of my favorites. I mean, you have Gary Burr, and
John Knight.
That's what I was getting ready to get to. John flippin' Knight. Outside of Morgan Wallen and Shane McAnally, there's not a bigger songwriter in that town.
Yeah, I think he just got an award. I'm trying to remember which group he's with. Was it BMI? I'm trying to remember. Forgive me, I'll find that out. But yeah, he's been on so many big hits, number ones, and for me, more importantly, so many songs that just found their way in my heart and won't let go, including a song called "Boy" that Lee Brice did. And Gabby Barrett's "I Hope," which is just as well written song as you could imagine. So yeah, I'm a lucky man, fortunate in the company I keep. That's the beauty of Music City, and the fact that I got to come here with this show called Nashville, and I got to meet all these folks. And for so many of those folks, I was friends with them for years before we ever finally wrote a song. I didn't want to bug them about it, but then we finally got to writing it, and in each case, we came up with something special.
See, and that's the thing about Nashville and you being Deacon and stuff like that, that you had that groundwork already laid, right? So
absolutely.
You really, it was one of those things that for the outside world, it was like, who's this new guy jumping into the country music scene? But in Nashville, well, everybody knew Chip Esten. Everybody was part of Chip Esten, and seeing you go, and it was just a natural fit. And what I find hilarious is I've spent some time with you. I don't know if I've ever met a happier person in my life. I mean, well, I'm just saying, I've spent time with you, man. I mean, that's all you do. And you've had heartbreak. We'll get around to that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you
know what I think that is? Thank you for saying that. What I think that is I'm doing the thing I love, this music thing. I walked away from it at a younger age. It's what I started with in college. I was in a band for 5 years. I always loved writing. I always thought this is what I would be doing, but I walked away to go do the acting thing, always figuring I would run into some other bandmates and I'd write some songs and we'd become big musical stars. And so to be at my age, getting now to do these dreams, it's so precious to me. And the fact that I get to do them, I can't be anything but grateful. And I think gratitude is at the root. What you're calling happiness is deep gratitude. I'm very thankful for the things I have and the things I get to do and the people I get to be around. So that's what you're seeing.
Dude, that may be one of the most wonderful things you just said. What you think is happiness is gratefulness.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's true. I walk around and you get to see me. Wherever you see me in person, you see me in person at Napa, surrounded by the best songwriters in the world, as the sun's going down in this wine-making paradise with these great people that have come to hear me. You can't be grateful right then. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know. You just always, every time I've been around you and I've had a chance to spend time with you and your wife, and it's just, I mean, you don't have that, you don't let angst get to you. And as I said, what I confuse for happiness, you said gratitude. And I'm telling you right now, Chip, if you don't call up John Knight or Eric Pesley and write that song, you're wasting time.
All right. I'm writing that down right now. Hold on.
I mean, who wouldn't want to hear that song? Who would not want to hear that song? What you call happiness is gratefulness.
Yeah,
and I don't.
And I love that you did say, that I've been through things and we're human beings and we have feelings. And that's what this album addresses. There's days that my faith wanes. I mean, this project, this album, there's a certain amount of Don Quixote kind of optimism and tilting at windmills. I mean, what am I doing? Who in the world at my age starts has their debut album? So there's things, and it's very easy. You've heard that thing, comparison is the thief of joy, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, it's easy in this town to look around and see people doing the music thing, even in acting. I mean, I've had so many great jobs and great roles that I've got to perform, but then there's always the Emmy world and the Oscar world. So you can always look up and go, I want more there. Certainly in Music City, I see these tours these folks go on in these arenas or stadiums and these number one smash hits and all that. And then meanwhile, you're just working hard at your album and plugging away and doing your best on it. And honestly, I would not change that for the world. But sometimes you let that comparison be the thief of joy. So it's not an always thing. I try to stay in that place of remember. And gratitude, by the way, is the antidote to all that. I mean, if you just stop wherever you are and count your blessings, that old thing about wherever you are right now in your life, stop for a second and imagine who you were 10, 20 years ago. They'd be astonished at all the things you have in your life and at the things you get to do. And it's okay to want more in terms of aspiring to a larger reach as an artist or to, bigger venues and more people and all that. It's fine to aspire to all that, but don't let it for a second take away the joy you have in what you have already.
You say that, and I literally just read yesterday, the doctors, there was a thing, and I think it was American Medical, but they talked about the things they wish you would do to improve your health. Right? And stuff like exercise, drink more water, stuff like that. You know what the number one recommendation was?
Yeah.
Write down what you're grateful for each morning. If you can do that, that was number one. This is from doctors. This is not from preachers. This is not from, self-help gurus. This is from the American Medical Association. That if you can find something to be grateful about every day, it will improve your health.
And it's almost a diagnosis that if you can't, that means you're having a problem. You're having an emotional, spiritual problem because except for the very, very few at the end of the bell curve that have nothing or even in the I have relatives who in the midst of the worst trouble and sickness and ailments can tell you the things they're grateful for. And that, in fact, in those moments, my daughter, Addie, had leukemia when she was 2.5. This is 20 some years ago that she was diagnosed. She is now fine, healthy, fully recovered and doing well. But even in those dark times, hard times make light even brighter. The things that are good in your life, make them even more. So in those moments, we were so grateful for those friends that were coming around and helping out. We were so grateful. So, it's almost like if you can't find gratitude, you're in a bad way. You need a little help. You need somebody to help you find it.
Well, I know you're the spokesperson for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and you also do with musicians on call. You're on the board of that, I think, but I know you do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I started out as an artist, and for those that don't know, musiciansoncall.org. It's an organization that sends music where it's needed the most, which is hospital rooms, like veterans hospitals, children's hospitals, standard hospitals, or even hospice centers. And when you're, they say comparison is the thief of joy, but it also works the other way. If you think you're having a bad day and then you go to play some music in a hospice center for a man in his 40s with his wife there, that type of comparison, you walk out and you go, all those problems I thought mattered so much and meant so much, they sort of pale in comparison. They sort of fall away. So that's the better way to do comparison, is to see how fortunate you are at any given moment like that. So those things bless me, but they also bless those folks. And that's why I got on the board there. It's important work, and I can see the power of music in those places. And between my work with Musicians on Call, getting to play music by a hospital bed, and my also getting to play Deacon Claybourne on Nashville. Deacon went through all these things, including the sickness, certainly heartbreak, but even more than that, alcoholism and addiction, losing somebody incredibly dear to him. So in going through these things, I found that people sort of identified with him, and they were able to look at some of the things they were going through, or somebody they love was going through. People come up to me all the time and say, my father was an alcoholic, and I recognized some of the things that he faced when I saw you face them. In any event, walking in his boots meant that people would come up to me and share to me the meaning of what there was. All of these things, Musicians on Call too, Addie too, all went into and go into now my songwriting. And it lets me process these themes and these ideas. And the fullest fruition of that is this album, Love Ain't Pretty. Love Ain't Pretty means life is hard. Love ain't pretty. It can, it's too weak a word for love. Love will put you on your knees, man, desperate for a little relief. But also what it is, love is beautiful. It's deeper and richer than just pretty. So I'm blessed that all these things I get to deal with help lead to that. And I'm able to process them through my music.
And that's why it was this until you got to this age before you did the album. You just answered your own dang question, right? How many people start doing what you do? Because you did have to have that. It's one thing to be Musicians on Call. It's one thing to go into a hospital and sing to someone who's got a sick child. But you have a completely different perspective because you had that sick child. You've been there. You know the despair. You know the unimaginable fear.
By the time you reach our age, you'll agree that there's very few that don't. Nobody gets out of this life unscathed. So yeah, but you're right. The album I wrote now, with all that having passed versus the album I would, if I'd come to Nashville in my early 20s, I don't know, I could have maybe written something pretty great, but it wouldn't have been as informed with those things, and it wouldn't have had the life experience that this does. And I think that's why the album took so long. I put out so many singles over the years. I don't think a single bears the artistic weight that an album does. A single could just be a thought you have in a moment. It can be funny. It can be serious. It can be sad. And I have all kinds of different ones like that. To me, the album has to have a through line. There has to be a gravitas there. There has to be a there, or otherwise it's just a playlist. That's not an album. Album takes you on a journey, and this one hopefully does that. I think of the albums that took me on the journey, whether it's Born to Run or Tapestry or there's just so many I could name.
I can go with you. Songs in the Key of Life. I mean, I can go.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I can go all the way down there with you. Luckenbach, Texas.
Even one that are collections like Squeeze, singles 45s and under. I know they were placed in a certain order. I know there's still an album. They're not just singles placed there, although they literally were that. So in any event, I just think of the car ride where you get in and you put the album, you put the CD in, or you just take that, whatever you're doing that's going to give you time. I know we're such short attention span people these days, but we all still take that long flight where we got headphones. We all still take that long drive where we just got something on. My prayer is that people just go, all right, I'm gonna go see what Charles Esten's on about and take a little walk down his road for a minute. And that's a thrill to me to hear people listening to this whole album.
You know what I love? When somebody surprises me with something that I'm not expecting. I didn't expect you to reference Squeeze. Come on, man. Let's me and you are going to take a car trip and you're going to sing along to Tempted while I just sit there. Because I don't want to mess with that voice.
They're so good. Black coffee in bed. Oh, there's so many.
I'm going to tell you my favorite song on the album, and I'm going to throw it at you right now. And it borderline pisses me off because I'm sitting there listening to that album and being all, it was a wonderful thought, a wonderful song thought process. But then about halfway through Somewhere in the Sunshine, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I sat here in front of this computer and just cried my eyes out. And I'm like, dang you. And thank you.
Well, that's high praise indeed. That's, that's just notes. That's just sound waves hitting you. That's all that is. If you break it down, it's just words and sound waves hitting you. And if it moves your heart in somewhere like that, and hopefully they're cathartic tears, and hopefully the beauty of it is what moves you, and the thinking of somebody that you love and miss so dearly is in some way talking to you right then, I become the voice for them. That's the powerful thing for me. That's why that song's at the end. I couldn't think of anything that really was going to follow it. If the whole album is about this journey of life and how hard it can be, but how you can find the beauty of it and the glory of it, the redemption of it, the happiness in it. Well, that's life. So now what? The next life. And in my faith view and what I believe, will definitely, the word keyword is light. It will be a light we cannot even comprehend now. We will be somewhere in the sunshine. So I didn't mean to make you cry there, but maybe
I'm glad you did, because you're exactly right. My brother passed on and my mother passed on years ago, and so did my father. And in just that moment, I almost kind of felt them standing around me going, hey, dude, that's what's happening. Don't worry about us. You'll be here soon, and soon to them is a blink of an eye. Right?
One of the things I love about that is you said, hey, dude, that's how we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be in very normal speak, the kind of way that if your brother reached out to you or wrote you, if your brother was given permission to write you a postcard from heaven, we sat there and we thought it. And John Knight and I said, you should see this place. Right? That's what it's beautiful. It's every place we ever tried to find. Because I do believe that. I do believe down here we are searching for, when you go to the Grand Canyon, when you go, Redwood Forest or any of these places, we're looking for something that is ethereal, ephemeral, something like we're trying to find it here. That's that phrase, heaven on earth. It's every place we ever tried to find. It's got a mountain view. You can see the ocean too. I guess that's why they call it paradise. So don't you cry for me, because I'm just fine. That's for such a poetic concept. It's very plain speak. And the second verse was real important. That's where we put our faith. It says, I know it's been hard on you, and he knows it too, because he hears every word you ever pray, and every tear running down, and every single doubt when you get here. He wipes them all away. And I'll be waiting on you till that day, somewhere in the sunshine. So that song blesses me. I can tell you that. So that's pretty cool.
It blessed me too. And like I said, I when the song started, I kind of got to feel what this is about. But then as you and John Knight layered more and more textures, right?
It's an unusual song. It's an unusual song. You know how songs go, especially country music. It's a verse, chorus, solo generally. Come out, do the chorus once, maybe twice, tag the end, and you're gone. This does the verse, chorus, and then it has this other part, this bridge. Don't worry, be happy. I'm finally home. I'm waiting. I'm with you. You're never alone. And it just sort of escalates, and that just becomes the song breaks out of what it was in sort of a praiseful way and sort of a heavenly chorus, just to lift you, because I know you're in that place. So I just want to say, I just wanted that I think we didn't verbalize it, but in that moment, we were just trying to let some of the glory seep through, the glory and goodness of it all. So I hopefully that was the task.
Dude, that last note, primo.
Oh, thank you.
Primo,
man.
the last note. And it's one of those notes that you better not try for it unless you're going to hit it, right? If you're going to kill the king, you better kill the king. and so when you hit that last note, I was like going, yeah, dude, yeah. You know,
and you get to do it live every time.
But you wrote it. It's in your range. It's what you do,
for sure,
right?
For sure.
And it's a note that,
you know, I'll say this too. The song has had a power. There's the YouTube video of it up. The comments of that YouTube video were so powerful and so personal that I ended up putting out another video where I incorporated the comments on screen because they were just saying. Somebody said to me, those are the exact, I had a dream and those were the exact words that my husband said to me. You should see this place, he said to me. And that blew my mind. Then other people saying this song makes me think of my sister. This song makes me think of my brother. And now, man, I'll get weepy. Now I'll be the one crying.
Well, it was beautiful because all honesty, I'm reading a book right now called Heaven by Randy Alcorn. I don't know if you ever read it, but it's basically what we can expect heaven to look like based on biblical scriptures. And what you described is what the Bible says, that there will be a new earth, that all the stuff that, that we would recognize, we'll recognize it, And so, yes, I do believe my brother will be waiting for me on a golf course going, tee him up, Chief, let's go. Come on. Let's do the stuff we always like to do. We'll recognize it. We'll get it. We understand.
Yeah. And even if it's slightly different in some way, it'll be so much better. These are, as C.S. Lewis called it, the Shadowlands, and that is the more real place. This is the less real place. It's funny because we always think of that as less real, and this is more real. Even quantum physicists will tell you that most of this is the space between, nucleuses. So it's. I don't mean to get too heady, but that's the real stuff.
Oh, dude, you and I can go down a rabbit hole because I'll get as weird and heady about. That's the kind of stuff I'm fascinated about. Right?
I said nucleus. Yeah.
No, right. but I mean the dimensions and stuff like that, and it's. I've explained that to my kids and stuff, and it's like it takes as much faith to believe in ultra dimensions as it does in anything that you and I share as a faith. So it's very. It's very interesting. And it's just it's as much as Life Ain't Pretty sounds like a fun album, it's a fun album. Especially as I just.
Well, Love Ain't Pretty is the title track. And then you have another one like A Little Right Now. That's somebody literally on their knees saying, I could sure use a little more faith, Lord, just a little bit more. My dad always had the phrase, he used that phrase. He was a salesman. So he would tell you, I'm just waiting for my ship to come in. So that line is in there too. And then you hear the pain of when love ain't love, like when a great love affair breaks up and becomes the opposite, becomes this terribly ugly, painful thing. So there's all that. But then somewhere in there, it turns a corner. There's a song, I Want to Make You Happy. There's a song, You're Back in My Life Again. So there's all these, and then finally, and then there's a song called Down the Road, which says, if you're feeling pessimistic, like, we get real arrogant about what we know. Like, I'll never make it. I'll never get this. I'll never get that on it. And then God just keeps surprising us. So it's like, leave room in your humility of how much you think you can predict. I mean, there's a temptation to despair, but we should never despair. Always keep your faith, keep your hope somewhere in there, because you have no idea all the goodness and fine things that could be waiting for you down the road.
Yeah. And the darkness is just temporary. The sun is always rising.
Yeah. And the song would say it's just the dark right before the dawn. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, as you can tell, I'm enjoying the heck out of this.
It's time to think differently when it comes to your parties, meetings, and groups. The catering from Havana Cuba restaurant in downtown San Jose. Instead of the same old, how about the most delicious Cuban sandwich you've ever had? You're tired of fries? Plantains, my friends, they'll change your world. And here's something you didn't know. Havana Cuba was voted one of the top 10 tamales in the entire South Bay. They have vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free options, and their website is 998cuba.com. They're located at 387 South 1st Street in downtown San Jose. It's Havana Cuba. Let's talk relationships. Scary, huh? My friend Stephanie Flood can help. She's offering a video series that'll help you reconnect. You can do it by yourself or together. Shows a kinder and gentler way of interacting with your partner, and that can lead to them responding the same way. And Steph is offering a 100% money-back guarantee if you follow the steps and it doesn't improve the lines of communication. That's not all. Go to afloodoflove.com today, enter the promo code Gary to get a 20% discount off the video series. It's afloodoflove.com.
How does a kid from Pittsburgh get into country music? Were you raised with, what did your parents, what did your salesperson, was he the Squeeze fan, or did you find it on your own?
It's funny because by now, Pittsburgh's kind of legendary in Nashville. I've heard many country artists say it's a great country town. And it's funny because I have a grandfather who, on my mother's side, my mother's Virginia, he grew up in Southern Virginia, Southwest Virginia, or South Central Virginia. And you would think I got the country music from him and from that part of the family. No, I did not. He loved Cab Calloway. So he liked all that other kind of more jazz-oriented stuff. But my father had, besides being a rock and roll fan like Buddy Holly and all that, my dad had a second awakening for country music, like everybody did. If you think of those other eras of country, like those 70s when I was a kid, and you had I had Glenn Campbell's Rhinestone Cowboy, which is funny because in a way, when you're on a TV show playing Deacon Claybourne, I'm a little bit of a Rhinestone Cowboy, and I know every crack in those dirty sidewalks of Broadway. But along the way, then you had like other songs like, Behind Closed Doors, or all them great 70s ones. And then 80s, I took, like so many did, I think. There's some great 80s country, but I was busy in college and high school doing more rock and doing REM and U2 and Squeeze and Dire Straits and on and on and on. But also at that time, when I was with my father, he was playing a whole lot of Waylon. I was listening to Waylon in the 80s a lot. Willie and Waylon, for sure. And he was also showing me about the history of country music. We had this incredible tape called 50 Golden Years of Country Music. And that had not just the songs, but the stories. So like the beginning of that album or that tape collection, it was a cassette tape. There's a guy named Lee Cash that goes, the year was 1918. A young man stepped up to the microphone and recorded Blue Yodel, #1. So he would tell the story of Jimmy Rogers, and then they'd play Teeth for Texas. And then they'd play, they'd talk about Tennessee Ernie Ford, and they'd play 16 Tons, or Roy Acuff and the Wabash Cannonball. And Minnie Pearl would come in and talk about Hank Williams and the pain that he went through, but the talent that he had. They would talk about his Opry debut and singing Lovesick Blues. And he broke into that first yodel. Before then, there'd been silence. I got the feeling called the blues, oh Lord. And when he hit that first yodel, he said they got on his feet and they couldn't get him off stage after that. So I was raised up not just on the music, but the stories, which means by the time I got to come here and I was standing on that Opry stage, mind blown. I could barely wrap my head around that.
I mean, can you honestly describe that? I mean, what was that like, especially since the country music legend, right? That the people who stood there.
One of the things, I've been so blessed to get to do so many cool things as an actor and as a musician over the years. And this is absolutely name dropping venues, but I've been blessed to play at some special places. I did Improv. I was on that Whose Line Is It Anyway? We toured.
Yes, you were.
We did Improv in Carnegie Hall. I played Buddy Holly. I played his music in the White House. I did the Royal Variety performance for the Queen of England. And in all those moments, it's so overwhelming it's strange. Your nervous system can only take so much. So in some ways you think to yourself, I know I'm not fully processing this right now. And maybe that's a good thing because it would overload. The computer would shut down. The circuit would be overloaded, right? So I've often thought that in the same way, when you go through something terrible, when you get really bad news, I often have that feeling too, like I'm not fully processing how bad this is. We call it being in shock. It means we don't have the nerve endings to fully encompass how bad. And thank God we don't. We're protected in that moment from really getting it. But the same thing's true at the other end. When something is so amazing, so it is sometimes a struggle when you're thinking of all the details, like singing your songs, remember your lyrics, who's going to be there, who needs guest passes, who's running late, who's in tune. Was this guitar in tune? That string broke? I got to fix. You're thinking of a million little things. You're thinking how nervous you are. So part of you wants to blank all that out and just get through it, which is why over the years, so many in this business have, anesthetized themselves a little bit. Take that edge off, they say. Have a drink here, have a pill there. There was a certain point where I realized that edge, that nervousness is why I'm in this business. It's what I want. I could have chosen many, many jobs where I never felt that a day in my life. So I've learned to try to embrace that and embrace the moment, but also be in the moment. I think as things go, I think I did a pretty good job on that night. I remember it well. I remember trying to take my time. I will tell you, I don't get that nervous that often. And if I could do it again, I started with a slow song. A song from Nashville called Back Home. And when you sing quiet, slow songs, everything that's happening in your nervous system is obvious. Your voice flutters a little. So I wish I had blown it all out in a big number first and then calmed down and got my bearings. But I pulled myself together, and there's nothing wrong with being a little nervous at your grand Ole Opry debut. But the one thing I love that I got to do is I played a song called Act Naturally.
Buck Owens, the Beatles, all of them.
Exactly. Well. But the reason I did that is I knew very well why I was standing on that stage, that, there's no way I could say I earned that or deserved that. So I was telling everybody, and the words were perfect. They're going to put me in the movies. They're going to make a big star out of me. Going to make a role about a man that's sad and lonely, Deacon. And all I got to do is act naturally. So I said, the last line is, I hope you'll come and see me in the movies, the biggest fool you ever see. Finally hit the big time. That's right. I said, I hope you'll come and see me on the TV Wednesday nights on ABC. The biggest fool to ever hit the big time. And all you got to do is act naturally.
So that's an improv king, always an improv king.
Well, that helped me. Yeah, that helped me. Laughter is a good way to calm your nerves and get through it. And they all got to laugh, and I got to laugh. And I felt a little bit better. But the one final thing I'll say that I mostly remember about that is the incredible kindness of that Opry family welcoming me there. Most specifically, not only the great Jeannie Seeley, who introduced me and I'm still very close with, but the great little man himself, Jimmy Dickens. Who was, I think, 91 at the time, but he was 93 when he passed. And that first night, he came to my dressing room and he welcomed me and he made me feel welcome. And if a man that was there with Hank Williams many a times hanging out and one of his dear friends tells me I belong there that night, well, then who can say otherwise?
Well, and that's the only thing I would argue with you when you said that you didn't know if you had done anything to deserve to be there. And I would argue, yeah, you did. You did a lot. I mean, they embraced you because you made country music, and you in the show made it three-dimensional, right? It wasn't just surface. And I think that's when we lost our way in the 80s in country music, and we did. That's why people backed away. It became just so much surface. And then we got a little bit more into it, William Whalen, but still that's two-dimensional because you can't go the other way. When you guys did a great job of showing, hey, this is the part you don't think about. These are the things they're having to do. I love the quote that you had said about Deacon, that he couldn't say stuff to your face, but put a guitar in his hand and he could tell you everything you ever wanted to know.
Oh, you know what? I want to say one more thing, just going back about the 80s. You know what the 80s had that was pretty, and it moved me too, was people forget the power of Urban Cowboy. So once again, where a movie or a film, a production brings people back to this music. You really got to give it up to John Travolta. He did it with two entire genres. He basically single-handedly started disco, or, brought everybody to disco after Saturday Night Fever. And then just a few years later, what am I talking about? 3, he brought everybody back to 50s music with Grease. But then a few years later, he played in that movie, Urban Cowboy, and man, just some of that Gillies music, like Looking for Love, and all those songs that brought me back there for an 80s minute. But in general, I appreciate what you say about Nashville, and I don't mean that the show didn't do that, but I also never gratitude again. I know, or I try to wrap my head around how many folks have spent their life playing country music and playing really good country music, being incredible guitar players with great lyrics, great songs, busting their butt in clubs and honky tonks all over this country that will never get their moment on that stage. So that's where deserve doesn't really come into it. I don't think of it as deserving. I just think of it as if I'm blessed enough in this moment that they're going to ask me, you better believe I'm going to say yes.
What do you think was more nerve inspiring, the first night at the Opry or having to do improv at Carnegie Hall?
The Opry. Really? Well, I'll give you one good reason. By the time I got to do improv at Carnegie Hall, and this is because we were on the tail end of Whose Line Is It Anyway, and we were going out tour there, what I'd come to realize about that, the trick about that for me, and I learned it earlier. There was a place, I originally got on Whose Line Is It Anyway when it was on in the UK. And I was a young man. I already had a job. I was playing Buddy Holly on the West End. I didn't need it. Nobody I knew was ever going to see it. So there was a freedom to it. And the fear didn't creep in, the nerves. But eventually, once I got on the show and I realized how lucrative it could be for me and how important it could be for my family, and when I started to need it, then I started to say, come on, man, be funny. Be funny. And that's death. You can't say that. But I did. I started to go, come on, this is important. You need this. Be very good tonight so they hire you for more. And when I did that, I tightened up just a little. Mm-hmm. You might not have seen it. Somebody else might have. The guys I was with maybe did, but I just wasn't as loose. I wasn't as funny. And there's so many great people that they just brought somebody else to quit calling. It wasn't until I got back on in the States that I had to go audition again, big, long audition. And I got back on. And in that intervening time, when I was out of work from that, it was clear to me that I had freaked my own self out, that I had put fear in my heart by putting need in my heart and by putting desperation into the game, as opposed to, why was I funny back then? Because I was having fun. So instead of saying be funny, I said, have fun. If this is the only one, this could be the only one you do. Enjoy it. Be in this moment. So I did that. And once I did that, that was a game changer for me, for all of it. And for many things too, for all of this life I lived. So by the time I was at Carnegie Hall, first of all, you have to remember, it's not me by myself up there improvising. I'm surrounded by the best improvisers in the world. So if I say something very funny, they're going to make it even funnier. And by the way, if I say something not funny, they're going to make that funny. They're going to make so much fun of me that so in that sense, it's a little bit fail safe with those guys. And plus, once you quit worrying so much, it's likely that you will be funny.
I've talked to all of them. I've talked to Colin, and I've talked to Ryan and Greg. And which one, if you had to do a scene with one of them, I know it's basically asking you to pick your favorite, but I mean, it's just like the one guy that was it Wayne Brady? Who was it that you just knew, if the two of us are doing this, we're going to do something? And I'm sure you felt confidence with all of them because they're amazing.
Totally. For my money, on the show, it would be Wayne, because those songs and getting to do with him, he's a massive talent. But when we toured, the guy that I mostly did songs with, and there was another show that we did that was in Vegas that you can find on YouTube called Improvaganza. And that would be my buddy, a guy named Jeff B. Davis. They're all touring right now on a thing called Who's Live Anyway. Who's, WHOSE, Live. Yeah. Anyway, if you can find that online, if you're coming to your town, Improv on TV is amazing. Improv live. It's like the difference between magic. It's like watching David Copperfield on TV. It's impressive, but you don't get the impact of being in the room. So go see it. Anyway, Jeff and I, we got a song, song improviser simpatico that I just enjoyed it so much. Now, I'm happy to be on with any of them, but I also enjoy watching them. I think, for my money, by the way, I think Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery as a two-man on that show, I think are wildly critically, I won't say underrated, because the world loves them. And I meet people everywhere that they meant so much to them and made them laugh so much. But I think that they should be in the pantheon of all comic duos. Nobody holds Tim Conway and Harvey Korman in higher esteem. I think that Ryan and Colin should definitely be mentioned in the same breath as them fully, because then you also consider that Ryan and Colin made up all of theirs on the spot. Now, I know that Conway and Corman were geniuses and also made up some of it, but generally it was around a sketch that had already been written. These guys have done this for over 20 years now, 25, coming up on 30 years together. And the amount of just pure genius that I've seen from those two up close, and when I watch like a fan, yeah. I mean, they should all have lifetime Emmys, in my opinion.
Can I ask you this? Because, the way I do my show, I nothing scripted, right? And we'll do stuff and I'll say something and the line will come to me. I mean, I'm not even, it's not like the line goes, here it is, and let's work toward the line. For me, it's like, and then there's fondue, whatever the line is. How does that work in your brain? Do you like, I'm thinking of the song Emily. I was watching that because here's about the fun part about doing my research on Chip Esten is that you get to listen to all of his music and you get to watch him kissing on Connie, and then you get to go down the whose line is it anyway thing, right? So the Emily song, which was so wonderful, did you create the lines before the song started, or was it just happening in the moment?
Which one is that? You said the Emily song?
Yeah, Emily, who died in the
drop on his shoulder?
No, I'm talking about the Emily who died in the doo-wop song.
Oh, I don't remember in the songs. That's one of the things you have to do, I promise you, is I learned early you got to get rid of that rear view mirror. And so sometimes I'll watch those videos and I'll be like, oh man, I didn't remember that one, because you're always you're on to the next thing. But I will tell you, if you're interested, and it's funny because by the time I got to sit in a room and write songs in Nashville, it's a hell of a lot easier to do it with, great hit writers in a room where you have all day rather than you got 15 seconds to start singing. Generally, what I would do is, if you were asking me right now to write a song about a woman, give me a name real quick.
Hester.
And then what did Hester do for a living?
Accountant.
Okay, so Hester was an accountant. Now, as soon as I hear those two phrases, what I do in the dry erase board in my head is I start thinking laterally and topically. So Hester, immediately I'm thinking of rhymes for Hester, because I know I'm going to need that. You can never best her. So
she had wounds that would fester.
Yeah, exactly. All those things. So that's one thing you do. And then I go, she's an accountant. So accountant is a hard rhyme. So I probably won't say accountant, but I might rhyme LLC would be an easier one, or write off, or something like that, or IRS, or IRS. She does her best for the IRS, so take a walk, and now she works for H&R Block. So what you're thinking is you're thinking of all the words that will rhyme. Those are your payoff words, by the way. If there's anything that song improvisers, amateurs do wrong, is they start with their payoff line. Like they'll say, once upon a time I knew a girl named Hester. She had some wounds that started to fester. Then it sounds like, for some reason, it's not as impressive.
No,
as if you just switch them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was a girl, and God had blessed her ding, 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 with the ability to add. Her name was Esther. You know, if you put the payoff word second, for some reason, it's just wildly more impactful. And then in that moment, you just try to keep those words coming, and you've got a partner right there that's filling the other gaps. And the biggest lesson of all is when you run out of words, dance. If you ever see us do some big thing, that's kind of like we've run out of lyrics right now, so we're shucking and jiving for some time here.
That's the old Bugs Bunny cartoon. Oh, we're the boys of the chorus. We hope you like our show.
Yep.
You know, you guys just got a masterclass on that. You're welcome. I have to also, I got to touch on the fact that you won $32,000 on Sale of the Century. That was back in 1988. That's like $400,000.
It was $34,000 in cash and prizes. And this was to a young actor that was so broke that I knew I couldn't stay in LA. And honestly, I didn't have enough money to go home either. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And in those days, you could go in the newspaper and see a bunch of game shows to be on. And so I thought very methodically about it. I didn't want to be on one that was pure chance, like Wheel of Fortune. I didn't want to go home just because I'd spun bankrupt. I didn't want to go on like Pyramid or Win, Lose, or Draw. I didn't want to have to depend on a celebrity. I didn't want to be angry at Jamie Farr for the rest of my life. So I didn't want to do that. I thought maybe I could win once at Jeopardy, but I knew I might not. And also,
if you get the wrong category, you're screwed.
Yeah. And I didn't know if I'd win enough money. So I went found this other show called Sale of the Century, which was like Jeopardy for people not smart enough to be on Jeopardy. You had to be very fast. And I knew I was pretty quick. So once I got on there, I just kept getting questions that I knew. And I had some lucky moments as well. And when it was all over, like I said, I walked away with $34,000 in cash and prizes. And that was God telling me, you can stay in Los Angeles. Yeah, so it was a big deal. It was a big damn deal.
That changed your life. I mean, you know, and you went on a couple of them.
You look at my wife's left hand right now on her wedding finger is the ring, the diamond ring I won on that show. It was not an engagement ring. It was an anniversary ring with multiple diamonds. And I told her when I got down, I kept it in my pocket. I kept it safe for a couple of years. When I finally got down on one knee, I said, we can change this ring and go get, and she goes, no. That's the lucky ring. So on her 25th anniversary, I went and bought her an engagement ring. Since she already had an anniversary ring on her engagement, I bought her an engagement on her anniversary.
Can I brag on you a little more? I mean, you won $500,000 on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire for your charity.
Yeah, that was a couple years back. I was in New York City doing interviews for Nashville. And one of the last things they added was they say, so listen, Millionaire is doing a celebrity version, and they wanted to know if you would be on. And because of my daughter, Addie, who we spoke of earlier, I raised money for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I promise you, I did not want to be on it because it was a busy couple days. And I knew I'd just be a little brain fried. But they said, well, your charity will get $15,000 no matter what. And I knew I couldn't turn down $15,000 for LLS. So I went along and did it. And we talked about that frame of mind that I said earlier about being nervous or something. I was the exact opposite. I was so tired. I was so sort of out of it that I was completely at peace. I just walked in there, and Cedric the Entertainer started asking me questions. And after a little bit, I started getting to high enough amount of money that I thought, all right, you cannot risk this money. This is money to cure cancer, to fight blood cancer. So yeah, you have to know that you know that you know if you're going to answer the next one. And so, and what I meant by that is you get A, B, C, D. If I knew the answer before they saw the A, B, C, D, well, then I would guess it. And then the one that got me, I was at 250,000, and they said on the Beatles cover, Abbey Road, there's a license plate on one of the cars. What is that license plate? And I said, Cedric, I'm afraid I know this one. And he was like, what? Just over the years, I'd gone down that rabbit hole. You ever hear that theory that Paul McCartney
was dead? Paul was dead.
Paul McCartney perished in an automobile accident. Was this conspiracy theory? And one of the concepts, one of the clues was that the license plate had 28IF in it, which meant he would have been 28 if he had survived. What I love about that conspiracy, by the way, is I just picture the meeting on that thing. You go, well, Paul is dead. We need to go get another Paul McCartney. And the guy going, I'm on it. Like, where are you going to find another Paul McCartney?
And by the way, he needs to sound just like him.
Exactly. And he needs to be able to write, and he needs to be able to play bass left-handed.
Left-handed.
And he's like, well, listen, I got about 14 guys ready to audition for that because they're dime a dozen, those Paul McCartneys. But in any event, that is how I knew that it was 28IF. So I got $500,000. The next one, I didn't know that I knew it. So I said no, and I walked out there with $500,000.
Did you end up knowing it? Did they show you the answer? Did they show you the $1 million question?
The beauty of it, he says, what would you have guessed? And I would have guessed wrong. So
good Lord taking care of you one more time.
Yeah, once more.
You have been so generous. And by the way, that William and Mary education paying off, right?
Absolutely. I went there and I majored in economics. Why, I could not tell you. But what I really majored in was my band. Along the way, my mom would tell you what I really majored in growing up was television. I had it on all the time. So I knew all these little things. And back then my mom goes, what is that ever going to do for you? You need to study your books. So I called her, hey, mama. All them game shows I watched, they might answer.
I've told you before, you are literally the only person I've ever known who's gone to William and Mary.
Oh, really?
I've never known anybody who's gone to William and Mary or Holy Cross.
You know my wife, Patty, right?
Yeah, well, Patty, that's what you
know too.
I know too, right? You're the only last name I know.
There you go.
Who's gone there? And I'm like, because I always sit back and say, I'm an Alabama fan, and people hate on Alabama. And I said, well, Alabama, you get hated on if you win. I said, nobody ever hates William and Mary, And I'm like, well, now I can't say that anymore.
Yeah, well, everybody knows it from, and I don't even think it's probably about the college, but maybe it's from the Steely Dan song. It said, oh, no, William and Mary won't do. You know that line? Oh, no, William and Mary won't do. Boom, boom. So that was always the claim to fame. But yeah, it's not super famous. But a lot of famous people came out of there. Jon Stewart, with the comedian Jon Stewart came out of there.
Going back to the Daily Show now.
Glenn Close went there. Scott Glenn.
Scott Glenn. Speaking of Urban Cowboy.
He was the bad guy in Urban Cowboy.
He was the bad guy.
What a good Patton Oswalt, the comedian, played Ratatouille, the book. So there's been some folks that came through there. Linda Lavin, who was Alice, which I always watched back in the late 70s. Yeah.
And I also have to admit, you got to be on Star Trek. You
got
a Klingon. You got to be on Star Trek on Star Trek Next Generation and the best episode of the 3rd season of Voyager. The absolute best episode.
We got a Trekkie here, folks. We got a Trekkie right there.
Yes, we do. We do.
I agree. I thought that episode had some depth. That was a lot. It was very cool to be a part of that.
It was very good. It was a heavy, wonderfully written episode that you did not expect.
Oh,
right?
I agree.
And it was a beautiful, touching, listen, we're talking about genocide. And having to put that in science fiction and make it something that the person can palate and not hate the people who are there. Honey, it's called Remember, if I think.
Yeah.
It's the name of the episode.
Explain it in depth here, but it was, as they do so well, did for so many years on that show, did so well, they're able to take these topics and take them, to this other place and to do them by analogy or by coming at them from a different place. And they did that one. Such a tough thing to deal with, the Holocaust and all that. But I thought they did a wonderful job showing, I don't know, just the horrific aspects of that.
Well, and the cost.
Right. Yeah. The cost.
The cost. Sure. That's
and also
that's
the way,
thing.
And also the way that kind of hatred can come about. By dehumanizing or, probably not the right phrase because they weren't humans there, but this is how you can make somebody less than another group and come to hate other groups. So just powerful stuff as they were able to do, as I said so many times, but that one, to be on a Star Trek like that and then have it to be that powerful as a young actor meant the world to me.
Well, it was brilliant. And I didn't even know it was you at the time because you weren't you yet. All right, let's be clear. You weren't you yet.
Of course, yeah.
And now going back,
but I wasn't.
Yeah, but you weren't the you I knew, right?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
weren't the you I knew. And then going back and watching that episode again was just wow. It was just so much fun. Well, you've been more than generous with your time, and I've taken every second I'll take from you because I could go on for hours with you. And at some point I'd end up asking you to sing "Tempted" from Squeeze, and you don't need to do that. And thank you for "Somewhere in the Sunshine." I meant that. That was a moment for me, and it was really wonderful.
I appreciate you, and I'm so grateful you had me on to talk about the album. It means so much to me that I got to do this, and now I'm just trying to help folks find it and see if it moves them at all.
Life Ain't Pretty. It's out now. It's Charles Chip Esten. You can find him online. Love Ain't Pretty. I keep getting that wrong. I don't know why. I'm sitting there the whole thing. It's like love ain't pretty. Life ain't pretty sometimes.
Well, true. I mean, I've said it in interviews that love ain't pretty and life is hard, but in the end, they're both beautiful and they're both worth it.
Yeah, and so worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is what it is. So, my friend, when you make it back out to California, the wine's still good.
I can't wait.
Love to see you.
Take care, brother.